Hey Rad Dads, Walter here. I would love to have you involved in our Facebook group. I'm growing a tribe of people just like us to finally have the community of like-minded individuals, of people supporting you, of brothers that I've long envisioned through my trying circumstances. And as a tribe, we can learn and grow. That's what life is all about. Join me on the We RAD DADS group page on Facebook. Hello and welcome back, Rad Dads. I have a pretty interesting Micro-sode here for you today, and I'm pretty excited about it. I've been working on it for a while. It's been ruminating around in my brain, bouncing off those walls, and I'll get right to it. But before I do, I want to tell you that it's going to be kind of a mind bender. It gets pretty deep, and I enjoy these sort of mental exercises, if you will. I'm pushing mental weights around. Don't get scared off by a lot of this stuff because it took me a while to kind of digest it myself. So I'll try and break it down in a way that makes it, easily digestible. I would like to introduce you to a Greek philosopher by the name of Heraclitus. Doesn't sound familiar, does it? No, you think Greek philosophers, you think Plato, Aristotle, Socrates, morons. Okay, yeah, that was another quote from Princess Bride. And I swear I have more movies in my arsenal, but this was just too perfect. I digress. Heraclitus is famous for many things, but one of which I feature often on We RAD Dads podcast. And it is this simple quote: "The only constant in life is change." Well, that may be paraphrased from ancient Greek, but it does hold true still. And it's interesting to note that in 535 BC, they were aware of these concepts as well. And as you're going to find out, they're aware of a lot more. Heraclitus was one of the pre-Socratics. Well, that's pretty obvious and self-explanatory, right? He preceded Socrates. Heraclitus was born in Ephesus, which is in modern-day Turkey. Now, at the time of his death, in 475 BC, he was 60 years old. That's pretty old for someone living at that time. One of the biggest takeaways I'd like to point out here, and in correlation with some of the things we talk about, is legacy. Yeah, Heraclitus was a very well-known Greek philosopher, but he wasn't the only one. In fact, as you'll find out, he's a bit of a standout. I hope you see the correlation I'm making here when it comes to legacy. Every man has their legacy, and in roughly 400 BC, Heraclitus is no different. Here I am talking about him today. Heraclitus was known as the obscure, or dark, and that kind of resonates with me a little bit because, well, I've always been a little bit obscure myself. Now, what I love about Heraclitus, the more I dug into it, is how essentially all of his famous quotes are coded or shrouded in mystery. Well, it's no wonder why they would call him the Riddler, the obscure, or the dark. Heraclitus maintained that ever-present change is the fundamental essence of the universe. Are you guys starting to see a pattern yet? Now, diving into this a little bit, we're introduced to something called the Flux Doctrine. And that's something where Heraclitus basically decided that everything is in constant motion always. From one moment to the next, nothing, even the most stable, secure, or long-lasting objects, are the same instant to instant. Heraclitus was disappointed in his fellow man who weren't at least curious about uncovering the truth within themselves. People who distracted themselves. Are you starting to see a parallel here too? At that day and age, 400 BC, he observed the same thing that we're seeing today. And this quote sums that up beautifully. Most men are useless and ignorant conformists. He speaks of a tunnel vision, a perception through certain paradigms that lead to certain beliefs, opinions, insecurities, or desires. These paradigms are often not challenged, and therefore this tunnel vision is allowed to continue. He claimed that most men were, quote, blind to truth. He referred to these people as sleepwalking masses. You know, I have my own word for it. I call them sheeple. Yeah, that's right. Sheeple. That's copywritten and trademarked, by the way, by yours truly. He spoke of people who just go through the motions, getting by in their daily lives, repeating a pattern day after day. Other men, he said, forget what they do when awake, just as when asleep, end quote. But when asked about the enlightened man, the one who searched within and started to find answers, Heraclitus' opinion changed. One man, he says, to me is 10,000, if he be the best. He went on to say that one must find their own truth, that their individual must see the individual truth. A truth only to them, but only after searching themselves and seeing it through their own eyes. This speaks to having multiple paradigms. Essentially, that means looking at things from several viewpoints. This only comes from experience. This can't be taught. This concept was known as part of his logos. Heraclitus claimed to have found a portion of this logos as he, quote, searched himself. Something I like to say on the show, and you may have heard. Search yourself, and when you find yourself, be yourself. Heraclitus' Flux Doctrine was dominated by three principles. The first of which is, everything is in flux. And one of his more famous quotes is, into the same river, one cannot step twice. You know, there's a lot of ways we can go with this. But let's consider the river, in this case, our lives. Accept the past for what it is. Forgive yourself, learn from it, and move forward. Flow with the river. Because we all know it's a lot easier to flow with the river than to swim against it. Now, the second of these principles states, the world is an ever-living fire. Now, I'm a primal guy myself, and I have my background in fire. And this speaks to me. I hope it does to you as well. Heraclitus says, a man's soul is fire. Reason, he would reason, pun intended, I guess, is hot and dry. Reason is the core of a man's soul. And Heraclitus said, a dry soul is wisest and best. He went on to contrast this by saying, a wet soul is worst. A man, he said, when he is drunk, stumbles, not knowing where he goes, for his soul is wet. Now, I'd like to really draw your attention to this point right here, because Heraclitus uncovered something that we've already uncovered here at We RAD DADS. You know, my interview with Jason McKenzie identified the effects of alcohol as a coping mechanism. Now, I want to strongly caution you all about the consequences of relying on something, a substance, to make you feel better. Now, this isn't an after-school special, and we're all adults here. But in my experience, in all my interviews, with the people that I've talked to, alcohol is a common factor to people's downfall. So I identify greatly with what Heraclitus is saying here. I'll step off that soapbox. And the third principle states, war is the father of all. And when I say war, I'm not talking about altercations. Heraclitus went on to say, anything that comes into this world does so through the destruction of something else. I'll use myself as an example. I was well on my way to a career in professional fire, but circumstances in my life, coupled with the decisions that I made, kept me from attaining that. And here we come back to gratitude, because I am in fact grateful for this opportunity. And that's exactly how I see it. It's a huge opportunity that I never would have had I been successful in what I thought my life was going to be. It's taken me some time to come to that conclusion, but now that I see it, I'm thankful that my path took a difficult turn. It's turned me into the person I am today. I hope you feel the same way about your struggles. And in this way, we've both, in Heraclitus' words, searched ourselves and seen the truth through our own eyes. In this way, I hope that we are striving toward our best selves. Heraclitus went on to reason that war is justice. Forces are opposing each other. Things are transitioning constantly due to outside influences or inside pressures. This can be reflected in Newtonian physics laws, specifically Newton's third law. For every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. Now, I could dive into that, but I'll save it for later. I think we all see the point here. There is a war inside of everything, and, as we all know, everyone. It is because of these opposing forces that makes an object what it is, or a person who they are. He illustrated this point by a simple strung bow. While it looks stationary on the outside, peaceful, at rest, there are forces opposing each other, and should one element give way, the other would win, resulting in a complete transformation of the object. The bow would straighten if the string lost, and the string would go limp without the bow, each engaged in struggle against each other, but only useful together. Nietzsche. Yeah, we're going to go there. Nietzsche was a fan of Heraclitean principles. He said, it is common to think of the great individual as one who has overcome their evil passions and cultivated inner peace and harmony. That's what we all know as peace. But in Heraclitean fashion, Nietzsche then reasoned, the great individual is one who harbors a strong internal division, where evil and good passions are engaged in a battle with each other. I hope that sinks, that some of the greatest minds in history feel that a great individual is one who shares both paradigms. It's all within us. It's the yin and yang principle, and that no one of us is free of each of those opposing forces. Good, evil, right, wrong, moral, not. It's how we choose to employ them. And although we started with Heraclitus, I'm going to end with Nietzsche. In this quote, driving home my final principle. The essential point is, the greatest perhaps also possess great virtues, but in that case, also their opposites. I believe that it is precisely through the presence of opposites and the feelings they occasion that the great man, or the bow with the great tension, develops. The point here, I hope, is quite obvious, and I implore you to go ahead and listen again, because it took me a couple times to really let these lessons sink in. I hope I've enlightened you some and sparked a thirst for knowledge, from Greek philosophers to Renaissance physicists to German philosophers of the 1800s. I'm going to close with this one-liner. The obstacle, in our case, is the way. You're doing a great job out there, dads. Don't let anybody tell you differently. This is Walter Eggers, encouraging you to stay up, stay connected, and stay rad, dads.